Today's video, it's all about melting cast iron, but with a difference. I'm going to melt cast iron, but to replace part of it I'm going to use some scrap steel, which is just over here. And what I'll be doing, because steel is very inflammable, I will add coat pieces here, and that will protect the steel from burning up, and it will absorb some carbon to bring it roughly to cast iron level. The ratios that I will be using is cast iron is 90%, and for scrap steel I'll be using 10%. Now you're probably asking why I'm using 10%. It's a difficult thing to get steel to dissolve in cast iron, so if you want a recoverable melt, it's best off to start with a very small amount, maybe even 5%, so to see how it works. And the very last ingredient I will be adding is ferrosilicon. The ratio I'll be using is 0.5%. This piece is approximately 35 grams, and I will be adding it just before I pull the crucible out of the furnace. So at this point you probably think it's okay to throw in any kind of steel. Well, no, it's not. Why I like this steel here is because it's constructional steel. It's a low carbon steel generally, and it doesn't have any hidden alloys. And what I'm melting today, I'm using these punch blanks. They've come out of angle iron from a manufacturing establishment near where I live, and instead of drilling the holes they punch them out. Now the steel to avoid is over here. This is free cutting steel. It is the worst thing you could ever add to cast iron because it's got high concentrations of sulfur and lead, and it'll make cast iron extremely brittle and hard. And the other thing you don't want to add is these screws. Here is a close-up shot of these screws. One's been plated with zinc and the other one most likely cadmium. And when these have been plated with these metals, they will cause havoc in your cast iron. They will make them extremely brittle and usually very hard as well, so avoid them like the plague. This is the crucible I'll be using. It's an A6 crucible, and normally I can melt about 6.5 kilos, but today I only would be using 5 kilos, and the reason for that is because I have to add so much coke so it forms a protective layer. And then what happens is, as the cast iron melts, as you'll see down there, I've still got to add some more, and then when the last cast iron piece has been added, I'll wait until the furnace gets a lot hotter, and then I will start adding the steel, because then as the steel is in a lot hotter temperature, it will absorb carbon a lot quicker. take a quick look at the moulds before I knock them out. This is the very first one I poured, and that's the ingot left over. Be very interesting to see what that ingot looks like when it's broken in half. And this is the second mould I poured, and the all-important wedge test. That should show exactly how soft or how hard this cast iron is going to be with the steel mix. And this is the third mould I poured. It's the vice nut, and here is the vice nut itself. I didn't put a riser on that one, so it'll be interesting to see when I knock that out, see how much shrinkage there is. And this is the last mould I poured, and that's the riser just there. Be interesting to see whether that fixed shrinkage in the centre. Well, I'm impressed. Have a look at that. It's grey all the way through. Normally they will chill right at the very edge there at the bottom, but there's absolutely no chill whatsoever. So the wedge test will be exactly the same. This is the sand cast wedge test. We'll give it a break, see what happens. Ooh, that's tough. Now here's the wedge test, sand cast, no chill mould. As I thought, be grey all the way through. Couldn't get any better than that. But there's one more test I'd like to do. I'd like to drill a hole through the ingot and see what it drills like. Now for this test, I'll drill all the way through, but I'm interested to see exactly what it's like on the very edge just there. Here is a close-up of the ingot and the drilled hole, and this is where it came out the other end. Very successful test, I'm very impressed. This is the 4 sand castings I poured with the cast iron and 10% steel mix. And this is the vice nut. This one here had no riser, but I used a thicker sprue. It has a tiny bit of a shrinkage depression just here. This is the one with the riser. It's got a tiny little shrinkage hole just here. It's caused by a hot spot. Here is a close-up. You can see the little shrinkage hole right next to the riser. And here is the other 2 castings. This is 1/2 of a billet mould. Come out quite good. And this is the other half of that billet mould. Come out quite good as well. Here are the 2 billet moulds halves that clamped together. I've got pieces of wood to centralise it and to support it. Now we're going to take a light cut off this face and see how well the casting machines. Now we'll have a look at the surface finish. Have a look at that. Absolutely beautiful finish, soft as, wonderful cast iron when you add steel to it.